Alex Jones on the left be like, these school shootings are real, and we should implement common sense gun safety regulations to, you know, limit the number of school shootings that do happen in the country, that it happens in increasing in increasing frequency. Holy, that is so crazy. I want to remind everybody that America is the only country where the police do not advocate for more gun control. Just something to consider.
Many of you know
America is the only nation on the planet where police coalitions do not advocate for more gun control, but less gun control. They either never mention it or are directly antagonistic to gun control. Every other fucking country, in every other nation, cops are oftentimes at the forefront of advocacy for gun control. That's how busted American minds are. That's how busted we are as a nation.
But we want to make sure that
gun control is not a leftist position. Working people cannot be disarmed. Yeah, man, shut the fuck up.
On this particular incident.
You're a fucking idiot, okay? America is already in the throes of fascism, and your dumbass is over here being like, oh, gun control is not a leftist position. Yes, it is, okay? Yes, it fucking is. Reasonable gun safety measures is absolutely a fucking normal position. It's not left or right. It's just common sense. You're a goddamn idiot fantasizing about a fucking violent, militant vanguard revolution that is never going to happen. Shut the fuck up. Yeah, they think common sense is disarming the working class. Like, I'm sorry, dude, if you're a psychotic person, like if you're a chronically depressed person, you shouldn't be able to have a gun, okay? Straight up. You could call me ableist all day, every day. I'm the most ableist motherfucker on the planet, okay? If you are a person who routinely experiences mental health episodes, you should not be able to have a gun because you will use that gun either on yourself or on others, okay? It is incredibly likely. Sorry, it's just the truth. And I find it very strange that you can't even talk about this. Like, there's this broken understanding is so embedded in the minds of every dumb Amerifat that, like, you even find this supposedly Marxist position on no, the working class must be armed to the fucking gills, like to the arm to the teeth. Meanwhile, the American government's response to now, I believe the number is like 14 veterans killing themselves every single day, is basically telling them, like, here, we'll give you a free lock on your gun safe and put a photo of your family in that gun safe too, so you don't fucking kill yourself in the last moments. Like, you look at that and there's like one extra hurdle that you need to overcome in the moment. That's how fucked up the situation is. I don't understand. I say this as someone who enjoys shooting guns, okay? I say this as someone who enjoys shooting guns. The notion that, like, guns are anything but a fun hobby is ridiculous. The idea that, like, we are more safe because we have more guns is demonstrably false, and yet people still make this argument. It is so shocking, especially in the eve of yet another mass shooting at another school. It's crazy. That encourages depressed people to keep it to themselves, though. I wouldn't associate depressed people with mentally deranged mass shooters. What are you talking about? 50% of the gun violence that happens in this country happens because people kill themselves with guns. The fuck? What are you talking about? Yes, dude, if you have suicidal ideation, you shouldn't have a gun. It literally makes the process easier, okay? The fuck? I'm not saying if suicidal people go and, like, do mass shootings. That's not what I'm saying at all. But they do sometimes kill themselves with their fucking guns. How do you enforce laws on a subjective medical diagnosis? You force it by law at the federal level. You say, if you want a gun, you need to not only get an adequate fucking brain dead take. Yo, fuck you for propagating a fucking stigma that you're not at all qualified to talk about, fucking idiot. I love this, dude. I love this. I love when dumbass Amerifats come in here and fucking chirp at me about how you don't understand. You're actually stigmatizing mental illness by saying people who are chronically depressed should not be able to have guns, because I believe that the primary purpose of government is to protect its citizenry, okay? Sometimes that means requiring motherfuckers to wear seatbelts when they're too stupid not to wear seatbelts. Sometimes it's to require motherfuckers not to drink and drive when they're too stupid to drink and drive. You will not be able to outwoke me on this context by being like, excuse me, sweetie. Excuse me, sweetie. You're actually being quite ableist. You're stigmatizing people with mental health. Yeah, dude. The overwhelming majority of people who are chronically depressed or have bipolar disorder or any number of different mental health complications in the community understand that reality. Okay, being depressed doesn't mean you can't decide your life is not worth living. You can value your own life while being depressed. I agree for more gun control, but saying depressed equals can't defend themselves. No, no, you're wrong. Okay, you're fucking wrong. Here's why you're wrong. The notion that guns are necessary for self-defense is already a fucking idiotic notion, okay? You have eaten that propaganda hook, line, and sinker. This country will be infinitely less violent and infinitely more safe if we just wiped out all the guns. Now, you could say that's not going to happen. We can never do that. There's too many guns. There's more guns in circulation than there are people. And that's fine. I understand that. But you cannot argue against that reality. America, out of all of the other comparable OECD nations, is the one that has an overwhelming amount of gun violence. I wonder why. I wonder what the reason is. They have the same rates of mental illness, okay? We have comparable rates of mental health complications in this country. Why do we have significantly more gun violence? Because we have more guns. That's it. And we have no restrictions on who can have those guns. And it is unironically a direct byproduct of the interest, the for-profit interest of gun manufacturers, which is why it blows my mind that so many quote-unquote lefties will eat that propaganda hook, line, and sinker, not realizing that you are serving the interests of gun manufacturers so they can turn profits. It's so stupid. America is literally the only place on the planet this exists. In Australia, I cannot simply comprehend someone like my dad with bipolar and depression with diagnosed with cancer saying, hey, my son, check out this new gun I bought from a fucking Walmart. Yeah. Gun for me, but not guns for thee, head ass. No, guns for nobody. Or if you're going to have a gun, it should be heavily restricted. That's it. The primary purpose of a weapon is to end life. Okay? That's it. That's the primary purpose of a weapon. It's fun to shoot it. I get it. I shoot it. I enjoy it. But people should be able to demonstrate the responsibility of owning a weapon like that. People should have to at least identify themselves when they are purchasing a weapon. People should be able to go through rigorous background checks and mental health checks before being able to purchase a weapon with the primary purpose of ending your life or ending other people's lives. Saying that everybody should be able to get a gun is basically saying, like, everyone should be able to, everyone should be able to get a fucking driver's license. Like, we have restrictions. And cars are a necessity for commerce. Cars are a necessity to be able to function in a car-reliant infrastructure. Guns are not a necessity in the same vein. It blows my mind that people still make these arguments every time there's another mass shooting. Okay? Why is restricting murder machines such a fucking issue? It should be more regulated than cars than anything else. I know. Jesus, bro, was just talking and not explaining why I was wrong. Wait, what? You said I'm wrong and that you're telling me and then claim I'm an IRA shill? What? I think I demonstrated why you're wrong. Okay? Guns are for self-defense, not a hobby, is a falsehood that the gun lobby and the gun manufacturers have concocted. The likelihood that you will accidentally discharge or use the gun inappropriately is infinitely higher than you actually using it to intercept a situation where your life is in threat. Okay? There are a million studies on this. So the notion that guns are for self-defense is already fucking stupid. It's completely made up. It is. But it's one that is so pervasive. It is a narrative that is so pervasive that has unironically created a need for guns because everybody has a gun, so you got to have a gun as well. It's literally, it's just so stupid. In so many instances of mass shootings and whatnot, okay? The overwhelming majority of mass shootings or overwhelming majority of shooters are actually apprehended and stopped by unarmed law-abiding citizens. Okay? They swarm. And that is after the killer usually ends up shooting a bunch of people. This is why you have a gun problem. Listen to these crazy chatters. Yeah, this is a community that's supposed to be like super progressive, and yet even in a community of like super progressive, like-minded individuals, there's still going to be a shit ton of people who are just like, I love guns. I think you're a pussy. I love guns, and I think like everyone should be able to have them. I love guns, and I'm going to overthrow a tyrannical government in the immediate aftermath of yet another mass shooting that occurred at another school shooting. It's like, it is, I think, one of the most obvious problems in modern American society is the mass availability of weapons, and how much that has very clearly increased gun violence. Do you think these guys will be there with their guns to overthrow the tyrannical government when Donald Trump refuses to relinquish control? No, of course not. Of course not. I do not have an issue with people having guns, okay? Although I believe that we would be living in an infinitely better society if, you know, nobody had guns. Having said that, however, okay, and this is something that I've covered a million times over, at the very least, we need common sense gun violence prevention methods. And that requires regulation and restriction. And the relatively modern false interpretation of the Second Amendment that plays a massive role in Americans politicizing their commodity fetish has caused this ginormous collapse and is a endless hurdle against this sort of thing. Everything, if we're going to talk about this from the perspective of like cultural signifiers, like things that we associate with our identity, guns, just like every other commodity, is not just a thing that you own for a purpose. It's not like your pan, okay? It's not like it's not a replaceable commodity. It becomes something more than that. When you own a gun, you become a gun guy. You know, you have a gun, you like guns, you know the different kinds of bullets, you learn more about guns. There's an endless sea of information out there on YouTube and on social media where you can just like get, you know, you can get gun magazines. You become a gun sexual. It becomes a part of your life. It becomes a part of your identity. And not only is it a part of your identity, even though it's basically just like a fucking, no different than like purchasing Gucci bags or some shit, okay? And that's like your hyperfixation. You like fashion or whatever, and you like, you know, Gucci bags. So you just buy a bunch of Gucci bags. Hasan is such a lib on this topic. No, I'm not. And if you think, if you're mistaken common sense with liberalism, then that's your fault. Yeah, I'm such a lib on this topic. People love China, okay? People talk about like how dope China is, okay? And how socialist China is. What are the Chinese gun laws then? See, my hot tech is a gun pervert. I think firearms also reflect like an ego thing. I see firearms as cool, but not different than like a really cool power tool. Not as a flex type thing, because people will take selfies with their AR-15s, but I've never seen someone take a selfie with a Milwaukee impact driver. Yeah. No, that you're absolutely right about that. Anyway. People are like, paternalism is bad when it comes to guns, and then advocate for universal health care. Yeah, no, all matter of government action is paternalistic. You are supposed to write rules and restrictions and regulations for the dumbest person in society. That's how you protect people, both from themselves and potentially from others as well. That's in the most reductive terms, that's what governance is about. Okay?
Making sure that people are safe.
Oh, so mentally ill people are the dumbest people in society? I don't know, but you might be an incredibly dumb person if you think that that's the only people that shouldn't have guns, is what I'm saying. If that's what you derived out of this commentary, then you might be both mentally ill and also one of the most intellectually disabled people I've ever encountered on this website. And there's plenty. It's a target-rich environment.
I guess the question is, would you want your child to go to a school with or without metal detectors?
I can't answer that.
I can't.
Right now,
Yeah.
Yeah, more metal detectors.
Is to create the safest environment that we can without metal detectors.
Wouldn't it make sense to arm the teachers? Yes, dude, totally. The solution to the solution to the problem is fucking more guns, actually. Arm the teachers. Arm the children is what I say. I think the children must not remain unarmed. They should have the opportunity to defend themselves, you know? Just like Israel. Arm the kids. Israel has a right to defend itself. The children have a right to defend themselves. Arm everybody. The only way to solve society's violence problem is by creating more opportunities of ultra violence. Wait, what? See, the liberals want you to believe we need to control our AR-15s. This young man just done shot up the school with a handgun, brother. Yeah, you're right. You're right, man. You're right. No gun control at all. Okay? No gun control whatsoever. You're right.
Jake, what we know is that the two other people who died, one was a teacher, one was a teenage student. At this point, there are 6 people who are in critical condition. The chief described that with life-threatening injuries. 4 other students have non-life-threatening injuries, Jake. Many more questions to answer here. We expect to get an update later this evening, Jake.
Isn't this embarrassing for America?
The police chief,
dude, Americans have no concept of shame. You can't shame people who are shameless. What do you mean? You think, like, broadly you can shame America or Americans? No, they don't give a fuck.
But yes, they do believe that the shooter took their own life, and it was in the process of their response. They responded. They got the call around 10:57 a.m. and then within 15 minutes we heard this incredible tell from the fire chief there of how within 15 minutes they had transported everyone from the scene to the hospital, including the shooter. The shooter was still alive when emergency officials responded to the scene, and then they even removed that person, and they were able to get them some treatment, but they died at the hospital. But the key here, obviously, Jake, is they're still working through trying to identify exactly the shooter.
And John Miller, a law enforcement source, says a 9mm pistol was used in the shooting. Tell us about that weapon.
Well, the typical 9mm pistol is a semi-automatic handgun. Most 9mm pistols can have a magazine that takes up to 14 rounds, which means if you have one in the chamber, that's 15 rounds. So this is a small, compact weapon, relatively easy to conceal, and one that gives you a large capacity of rounds to fire, which in a case like this, of course, just increases the damage, the danger, the impact. One of the things that we have learned throughout the terrible and repetitive history of mass shootings and school shootings, but particularly with school shootings, is that most guns come from the home. You know, when we ask questions like, how did this child in every place from Uvalde to other places, you know, obtain these weapons, it comes from the home in most cases. And with a teenager, this is one of the reasons that we hear the chief saying we're obtaining search warrants. When they go to search that home, they're going to be looking for the phone, the computer, the laptop, the things where they may find the building blocks, the planning, the writings about what led to this shooting to establish motive, any notes or communiques left behind where maybe the shooter put forth motive. But they're also going to be looking for, are there guns in the home? Are the guns accounted for? Is
police
this one of those
school
guns?
shootings are a white
Is
supremacy
one not
problem, not a gun
accounted
problem?
for?
It
Are there
absolutely
boxes,
is a gun
ammunition,
problem.
and
What are
so
you
on?
talking about?
Because they're going to want to obviously find out where this weapon came from.
You think other countries don't have white supremacy baked into their core identity? Why the fuck don't they have mass shootings in other countries, school shootings in other countries? Every single thing that you can point to in the United States of America, all of the other components that you can point to, isolate and identify, exist in virtually every other country on the planet. Okay? The one thing that does not exist in other countries is the ready availability of guns, the number of guns in circulation, and the ease of access to weapons. That's it. I mean, not in the same way that the U.S. has white supremacy, just saying. That's fucking delusional and also ridiculous. Okay? What are we doing? Oh my God, every single time, dude. This community has learned nothing from the past election cycle and the loss of the election cycle and how like staying on message is supposed to look like. That's crazy. Yeah, it's the white supremacy. Let's look at Madison, Wisconsin demographics in 2024. 7%, half the percentage. Madison, Wisconsin is 74% white. Is white people killing other white people? Not to say that there aren't fucking Nazis in Madison, Wisconsin, but the notion that white supremacy was a primary factor here is so crazy. Like, what are you talking about? You don't know any of that. You don't know what the shooter's ideology is at all. We don't know anything yet. And you're trying to slap on like white supremacy as a reason for this. Yeah, it's white on white violence. I just like even if this is straight up a neo-Nazi that did the shooting, it doesn't matter. It could be a straight up neo-Nazi that did the shooting and said, I'm doing this for being a neo-Nazi. Guns are still guns, and their readily available nature of guns. Having more guns in circulation than there are people in this country is absolutely what makes it easier for these sorts of mass shootings to happen in a country where there are a shit ton of white supremacists and whatnot. It still doesn't matter, though. There are plenty of other countries where there's like active neo-Nazi movements. There are plenty of other countries where fascists have actually gotten control of governments. Look at Italy. Look at Germany. And yet they don't have the same number of mass shootings or school shootings that we have. That's it. Europeans literally look at us and go, what the fuck is going on? This is the one issue that every European social democrat would agree on, regardless of their other, ideological differences with me. They literally look to this and go, what the fuck is happening in America? Whenever I cover this shit. Are you a gun control supporter? No judgment. I just don't think I've ever heard your thoughts on it. Yes. Of course I'm a gun control supporter. What kind of crazy question is that? Yes. I believe in good governance. Of course. The only time I can think of a similar thing occurring in Europe would be back in 2011 when a neo-Nazi killed a bunch of kids at a summer camp. That's the only time I can think of that mirrors America's mass shooting epidemic. Yeah. Right-wingers in a country outside of the U.S. look at our gun violence with the same eyes as left-wingers. Exactly. Switzerland is the only country in the European continent that has a higher gun ownership per capita rating than the rest of the nations. And yet, because of that reality, they still have more gun violence per capita than other countries, marginally higher than other countries in Europe. Having said that, however, it's nowhere near the gun violence per capita metric in the United States of America. Is baked into our society. It's not that gun control is radical, but Americans are insecure when it comes to trusting individuals, i.e. need for self-defense, because I would kill to get ahead and so will they. We're never getting gun regulation. There has to be another way. Alex Jones of the left, lol. Yeah. I'm an Alex Jonesian type of person because I believe that in spite of the many hurdles that, I will never cease to advocate for what I believe is correct. And in this circumstance, it's actually what I believe is correct has been implemented in so many other countries. Alex Jones on the left be like, these school shootings are real, and we should implement common sense gun safety regulations to, limit the number of school shootings that do happen in the country, that it happens in increasing frequency. Yeah.
Engage in what the
Leftist Alex Jones be like harassing politicians that are responsible for so much violence in American society instead of the parents of dead children in the aftermath of a school shooting. Dude, this is wild stuff. I swear. It's always like, it's just so commonplace. It's just so commonplace at this point where it's like we have streamlined the coverage. We've streamlined the coverage immediately. First of all, never let a good crisis go to waste. Okay, that's number one. What do I mean by this? Now we have like additional industries tasked with, designed with the purpose of extracting some kind of profit out of tragedies like this, where we now have like, gun violence, school shooting, gun violence related trauma experts. You know what I mean? You have like businesses dedicated to hardening schools because they're soft targets as it stands currently. it's kind of crazy. Like the one thing that keeps spinning is the wheels of capital. No matter what happens, there's like endless tragedies, and yet we always seemingly find a reasonable market solution. And that doesn't mean that we're actually eliminating the problem. It's never about eliminating the problem. It's about trying to triage and I guess like stop the bleeding by, making more money. Yeah, one man's tragedy is another man's opportunity. Owning guns puts people in your home at greater risk of being killed. New study shows millions of Americans may have already asked themselves these questions or versions of them, especially in the wake of horrific mass shootings like those in Buffalo and Uvalde. Record-breaking spikes in gun sales over the last 2 years, alongside surveys indicating that self-protection continues to be the dominant reason for buying guns, underscore a widely held belief that a gun in the home has security benefits. A new study from our research team recently published in the Annals of Internal Medicine shows no such benefits. We found the opposite. People living in homes with guns face substantially higher risk of being fatally assaulted. Mass shootings are the most visible form of gun violence in America, but they account for a small fraction of fatal shootings. 100% correct. It's the tip of the iceberg. Most of these deaths are lesser known, private tragedies that occur in homes and on the streets. We studied 18 million adults living in California. Nearly 2,300 of them that died by homicide over the 12 years of the study. Thanks to California's historical archive of firearm transactions, we can identify who in this enormous population personally owned guns and who lived with gun owners. The study's goals was to see whether homicides were more or less likely to occur in homes with handguns. Sorry, but if you spam by this before, apparently shooter was a rad fam that wanted to kill men. This is only from Twitter, but seems credible. No, it doesn't seem credible. You just said it's only from Twitter. We don't know anything yet. While that could be the case, it's fucking ridiculous to go, I saw something on Twitter and now I'm running with it. Seems credible. What the hell? First of all, statistically speaking, if we're going to go by, this is pure speculation. But if we're going to go by who the common perpetrators of gun violence and school shootings are, is most likely a cisgender, heterosexual, white dude. Okay? It doesn't even fucking matter in this situation, and it doesn't matter in any situation. Like, people's ideological proclivities are, sure, informative. Okay? They're instructive. But what you fail to comprehend, what you fail to consider is that other nations have similar tendencies. They just don't have the means of enacting this level of violence. And the reason why they don't have the means of enacting this level of violence is simple. It's because they do not have guns. I'd be shocked if it was actually a woman that did this mass shooting, because that would not be statistically the norm. It would be outside of the norm. Having said that, I reiterate my position in the aftermath of the Nashville school shooting, where the shooter was trans. That is the most American thing. Do you understand? It's the most American thing. Inevitably, it was going to be a woman that does a mass shooting or a school shooting. Inevitably, it was going to be a trans person that was going to do a school shooting or a mass shooting. That's just the reality of America. Oh, CNN confirmed the shooter is a female. Do you understand what I'm saying? I said this exact same thing in the aftermath of the Nashville school shooting, where the shooter was a trans person. It literally does not matter. Bro, we have 70-year-old Asian men doing mass shootings. Do you know how fucking statistically unlikely that shit is in general? That's just America, baby.
We heard there is not or was not a school resource officer at the school. It's obviously a private school. And I think that public schools in Madison might have school resource officers, but I'm not sure. Do they? And do you think more police resources should be deployed to all schools in Madison, not just public?
Yeah,
Well,
I don't care about the
exactly
statistical
what happened
relevance
today,
either,
except
chatter, for the
tragedy.
record.
And it's up to every school district whether they decide whether to have school resource officers
I'm
or
saying
not.
that
Let
it
be a
doesn't
local,
matter what
control.
the shooter is. I'm saying
What
that
have you been
before I knew
hearing
what the
from
shooter's
members of your
background was.
community?
What I've been hearing is just the complete and utter devastation of what this means to those students, those parents, those loved ones, family members, and everybody that goes to not only the school, but
Why
it
should
is
my
a
rights
private
be
school,
restricted when
because
it
it's a
only
private
addresses the
school,
symptom, not
it
the
impacts more than
problems?
just that neighborhood. You have people all over the county.
Dog, you know this argument that you're making, why should my rights be restricted argument you're making, can be made for any rule, any rule, any restriction, any regulation. You understand that, right? You don't have a right to own a gun. That is ridiculous. the assertion that you have some God-given right to own a weapon is already a faulty premise to start at. Okay? What you're quite literally, like, you sound like an NRA lobbyist, card-carrying leftist in the chat, talking like the dumbest fucking sovereign citizen you ever encountered. Chat, it sounds like an NRA shill. How will you make sure gun control doesn't just concentrate gun ownership in the hands of the right? What do you mean? What are you talking about? Feds have been in the Reddit board trying to make leftists like guns, like Gretchen. Wait, what? I mean, leftists do already like guns. American leftists do. American leftists are crazy. Americans are crazy. It's just like one of those issues where, you know how like even right-wingers in other countries are not so brain broken as to think like every person should own a gun? America is the exact opposite. Left-wingers, just like right-wingers, love their guns, okay? It's so funny to be like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, why are my rights being infringed on? Because this addresses a symptom and not the root cause of the problem. First of all, it is the root cause of the problem. Anyone that tells you that guns are not the root cause of gun violence as a problem is wrong. Secondly, every fucking rule and restriction technically infringes on your liberties to do something stupid. Here are people in the 80s reacting to DUI laws.
Drinking and driving here is viewed by some as downright undemocratic.
It's kind of getting common is when a fella can't put in a hard day's work, put in 11, 12 hours a day, and then get in your truck and at least drink 1 or 2 beers.
They're making it laws where you can't drink when you want to. You have to wear a seatbelt when you're driving. And pretty soon we're going to be communist country. Communist country.
It's so crazy. It's just nutty. I don't know. As a Wisconsinite, I still agree with them in that video. No, I know. Yeah, what about my rights to drink and drive as a woman? Previous studies have probed that question with virtually all finding higher homicide rates in homes with guns, but our study had 3 novel features. First, rather than calculating the household as a whole, as the prior research has done, we focused on household members who live with a handgun owners, but weren't themselves owners. In other words, we tackled a secondhand risk of firearm ownership. Surprisingly little is known about the secondhand risk of a gun in the home. Imagine being able to separate the risk of smoking to smokers and the risk of environmental tobacco smoke for everyone else. That, unfortunately, is about where gun violence research stands today, at least partly because of the data needed to conduct such studies do not exist. California's archive is unique. You know what else California is unique on? Despite being a fucking massive state and having a bunch of like weird loopholes as well, or weird laws, like patchwork of laws that make it less fun to own a gun and more annoying to own a gun, for example. All of those problems have led to one thing, and that is California's gun violence rates are lower than the national average. Shocking. California's gun violence rates are lower than the national average. So is New York's gun violence rates. As a matter of fact, so is Illinois' gun violence rates, despite the fact that Chicago's right there. And even then, Chicago, most of the guns in Chicago are not coming in from Illinois anyway. It's actually coming from neighboring states that you can easily go to and get guns from. Gun violence statistic map. Guys, you're about to find out something incredibly shocking. States where there are less restrictions on access to guns have significantly higher gun violence rates. Okay? The one exception to this rule is Washington, D.C. And even then, it's usually proximity to other states where you can get guns with ease. You know this fucking map. You've seen this fucking map. I've shown this map many times over. DC is the one exception to the rule. Outside of that, virtually every single state, Mississippi, Louisiana, New Mexico, Alabama, Missouri, Montana, Alaska, Arkansas, South Carolina, Tennessee, Wyoming. I've skipped DC. Wyoming, Arizona, Oklahoma, Georgia, Nevada, Kentucky, Indiana, Colorado, Idaho, Kansas, North Carolina, North Dakota, West Virginia, South Dakota, Ohio, Texas, Michigan, Virginia. Poverty also has to do with it, certainly. Do we know how socioeconomic status may confound these statistics? Yes, poverty plays a major role in this. Of course it does. It plays a major role in everything. But it's kind of like this. Americans used to say, why should I get vaccinated? That's just for obese people that could die from COVID. In a country where there is a 60% obesity metric. That means most Americans are fucking obese. They need to get vaccinated. You can't fantasize about a country that we are not. You have to write rules and restrictions and regulations about a country that we are. Okay? The fuck? Only poor people do gun violence in a country where most of us live paycheck to paycheck. I know. That's the other scary part of this dynamic as well. Also, how are you going to restrict it? You're going to just make only rich people have guns? That's crazy. I've noticed so many people trying to redistribute the blame. It's guns people. Guns are the common denominator. I know. And there are so many studies that point to this. It's one of those things that frequently loops back to the same problem that I constantly yell about. Okay? It is a lack of interest in identifying, critically thinking about anything, identifying what the actual problem is, looking at the common denominator, isolating it, and trying to tackle the problem head on. And when you don't actually do that, you just end up believing in a whole bunch of different conspiratorial things. It's a self-propagating issue, though. I only own a gun because I feel like so many insane right-wingers around me are going to get violent. I know. It's great. Everybody has a gun. I repeat what I said when the Nashville school shooting happened. It literally doesn't matter. While the overwhelming majority of shooters are white men, for the most part, it still does not change the dynamic. It's America. Inevitably, people from every kind of background will probably engage in a fucking mass shooting. And the reason for that is because the United States of America is an incredibly violent culture, has an incredibly violent culture, but more importantly than that, no access to fucking mental health. But more importantly than that, last but not least, perhaps the most significant, has a shit ton of weapons readily available. It's happened before too. Female mass shooters are very rare, but it has happened in the past. What? Here's what Tom Homan, the upcoming fucking mass deporter in chief, is saying on Fox News. This is a parody account, or like not his real account, but this is what he says on Fox News, like Tom Homan.
Also, as President Trump is committed, we're going to deputize every U.S. citizen in this country to help us find 340,000 missing children, because we need the public's help on this. Every mom and dad knows what it's like. They have a gut feeling when they see.
This will be great. Yeah. No, this will definitely be good. I can't foresee this being massively consequential and horrifying. Deputizing every fucking psycho, every armed psycho who now believes that like there is a stolen child. Every time they see like a brown person with a kid, deputizing the armed population. Why don't we address the mental health, the feelings of isolation, the lack of free public spaces, and economic problems? Great question, chatter, who keeps saying, why should my rights be restricted when it only addresses a symptom, not the problem? Okay. Great question from the chatter, the NRA lobbyist in the chat that is advocating for less gun control or no gun control, while simultaneously saying, well, why don't we just advocate? Why don't we fix all the other problems? I don't disagree with you. I think we should fix all those other problems as well, which is why I advocate for those other problems every fucking day of the week, including today. The issue here is, even if you were to solve many of these issues, there would still be a shit ton of gun violence, a shit ton more gun violence in the United States of America. Okay? You want to know why? Including suicides, for example. You want to know why? Because there's a shit ton of guns. That's it. It's that simple. It's so funny when people go, oh, dude, why don't we address the underlying material problems? Yeah, really? That's going to stop your 5-year-old from fucking shooting you in the dick? Bro, this country is so insane with gun violence. Dogs have killed their owners. Okay? Dogs. How do you materially solve that problem? We have such an insane country with so much readily available weaponry that we've had. This is a country where a dog has killed their owner with a gun in the car. How do you solve that? What kind of mental health complications exist when your 5-year-old picks up your gun and shoots you in the fucking head with it? They don't know what the fuck they're doing. It's ridiculous. And the irony here is that, once again, Other countries with comparable rates of mental health problems, other countries with comparable rates of poverty, literally do not have the same level of gun violence. It's that simple. One must ask the question, why? They haven't solved those issues better than America, and yet they still have virtually no gun violence in comparison to the United States of America. Yeah. Toddler accidentally shoots mom, 22 dead while playing, with mom's 22. With mom, who is 22 years old, dead while playing with unsecured gun, boyfriend arrested. Now, before you say, no true Scotsman, you're not going to solve all of these problems with gun control or whatever, but like, mom was 22 years old. Yes, is a horribly written fucking article title. How do we know it's an accident? I say arrest the kid. What about other countries of similar gun ownership? What? There is no country on this planet with, like, I believe the exception of Yemen, that has a similar rate of gun ownership. And even Yemen does not come near the American rate of gun ownership. There is no country on this planet that has a comparable rate of gun ownership. Like, people talk about, I talked about Switzerland earlier. Not even remotely close. No other country comes near that. Look, yeah, Falkland Islands. And then number 3 is Yemen. And in every other country, whether it be Serbia, Montenegro, Canada, Uruguay, Cyprus, Finland, Switzerland, whatever, they all have gun control. No other country has nearly the readily available firearms rating, like the firearms availability per capita rating. And no other country has anywhere near the lack of gun safety, gun violence prevention measures that America demonstrates. It is fucking crazy. America is 2 things, gun and burger. Okay, that's it. America only has 2 speeds, gun and burger, sometimes burger gun. Don't touch either of those things, please. Only one party is fighting against gun violence, and it's the Morena party. Cartels get their guns from the U.S. Yeah, I know. God damn, dude. Holy shit.